I want to thank you all for coming out. I want to thank the Asbury Park Library for giving me this platform to discuss and present the various history months, cultural history months. As you know, May is Asian and Pacific Islander History Month. But let me introduce myself. My name is Charles Trott. I am a visual artist and arts educator and the founder of DIA. DIA is an acronym, DIA, for Diasporic Images of Africa, DIA, or the DIA Project. What we do at DIA is identify, include, and redeem Africa's name as the premier civilization and culture bringer to the world throughout time. If you think of the scientific community, and if you're aware of what they have said for quite some time, there is some opposition, but the vast majority in the scientific community admit that humanity evolved on the African continent. In other words, modern man, which we are descendants of, came off of the African continent. It does not matter race. Race is a human or man-made construct, a false one at that. What is important is if you're human, regardless of what your paperwork says, you are a descendant of Africa. Just like you are a child of Gaia, of Mother Earth. Or maybe you're not, I don't know. But if you're human, you are. All right, so what we're going to do today is, the theme, by the way, is from the mainland to the sea. That may sound familiar. I'm going to break it down to you. We're going to look at some videos, we'll talk, some snippets of videos, we'll talk, and so forth, all right? There, in the Middle East, we have a horrible problem going on now. Middle East is no stranger to problems, but this one is a genocidal problem. I don't care what anyone says, all right? And there was a theme going around that sounded very much like that. I don't remember its quote, but it was something like, something to the sea.
From the river to the sea.
From the river to the sea, okay. So, in a way, subconsciously, I'm paying homage to that saying, from the river to the sea, although that's not necessarily a positive statement, because that is what is going on. But we're not going to go into that, other than the Middle East. Some more nonsense. I don't know the last time you looked at a map, and I didn't bring my big map, but we have how many hemispheres on the planet? Two. Eastern, whoops, how did it go?
Northern.
Eastern and Western. No,
That's
Southern. West and East.
okay.
Northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere.
We have, all right, so we have 4 hemispheres, but I'm concerned with 2, East and West, because Asia, the largest landmass on the planet, is in the Eastern Hemisphere. But if you look at it, more than Asia and Africa and the Pacific Islands and Australia and New Zealand are in the Eastern Hemisphere. More than that. Unfortunately, I did not bring my map. But if you think of it, or if you look on your phone, look and see where the prime meridian and its counterpart on the other side of the world, the international date line. But you're concerned with the prime meridian. Look where it cuts. Only the Americas is in the Western Hemisphere. A little bit of the Pacific as well. Okay? So, but let's go back. What I'd like us to be aware of is that there are obvious African descendants. African descendants are all over the world. They come in many colors, like flowers. There are flowers that are little, flowers that are big, flowers that stink, flowers that are sweet, flowers that are carnivorous, but they're all flowers. Well, look at us. They say, oh, that's a white one, that's a red one, that's a black one, that's a brown. Still human, okay? So let's go to it. What I want to do is show you some obvious African descendants that you will find that you seldom see in the story of Asia and the Pacific Islands. As a matter of fact, let me just ask you this quick question. If I say Asia, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Anyone?
Chinese, Japanese.
Yeah.
Middle East, Japanese, anybody else? Chinese, anybody else?
Almost in
Indian.
the southern end, but you know, it's, cause we got folks in territories that people don't even acknowledge.
Okay, so give me one.
The black folk in China, the black folk in Japan, the southernmost hemispheres, Australia, those areas, the Tibetan and cousins up in the northern regions and all that.
There you go. See, we listen, intelligent. We small, but we intelligent. I love it. You have named some of the things that I'm thinking about and that I hope to talk about now. But I don't want to talk anymore. I want to show you this little 5-minute and change slideshow / video, and then I'll talk more after that. Oh, as usual, like the old days, there's going to be a little reading. But I'm going to stop it so we can read it. Give me a little time to read. I missed the Shang Dynasty, just because I can't slow this up enough, but just want you to get the idea. The Lapita, of course, are the mother culture, they say, of the Pacific Islands, the Polynesians in particular, but also Melanesian and some of the Micronesian people as well. Oh, he's sleeping. Can you still see it?
Yep,
Enough to read it?
yep.
Okay. Sometimes when we see black obvious African descendants with blonde hair, we think it's style. And it usually is, but not necessarily. This is all natural.
We be all jacked up.
Pop on the women, especially the older women. The younger women, some of them are straightening their hair, but these Fijians, from what I understand, are very proud of their curls and they wear them.
Oh, wow.
Notice I use the word marketed as. I don't know what she calls herself other than Hawaiian. And you notice they had to say Afro-Hawaiian. I have a particular reason why I think she had to do that. Or Sephora had to do it. That's the company that hired her. And you know Bobo. He lived down the street.
No, Pookie in there?
Yeah. He used to be a nuisance, but he made something out of himself. Now this is a rendition of a man going back to the 1500s, Lapu Lapu. Oh no, this is talking about the Edna. Anyway, Lapu Lapu was a chief, Philippine chief, and he fought off the Spaniards. Magellan and company. There's some debate about that quote, but then again, there's some debate about this fellow, I'm not going to try and pronounce his name, as well as Yasuke, who they do know. The previous, I have a picture that's supposed to represent him, because of course he was around in the 1600s. There are no photographs, you know. But he was, Yasuke was a black samurai, had been made a samurai by the emperor at that time. This fellow is years later, as you can see. No, that's Chamberlain talking about this fellow. He was in a different time. But as we see blacks as they move around the world, as we are moved around the world, many times we become fighters, we become military, we become bodyguards for prominent people. Or Easter Island. Sitting out there pretty much by itself, except for, like you brought to my attention, the Galapagos are probably in the same area, not far from Easter Island, but Easter Island is pretty much by itself. usual, our story, regardless of where we are on the planet, I say we, I'm talking about obvious African descendants. But humanity, there is no so-called race or group that has not gone through slavery. Slavery's been around a long time. A lot of people have been enslaved. And many times by people who look like them. But with the obvious African descendant, be it here in the Americas by way of the transatlantic, they say transatlantic slave trade, or by way of on the east coast of Africa, by way of the Arabs and the Portuguese. Whereas for the Atlantic, it was the Spanish, Portuguese, later on the British, then the French and everybody else. Okay? It's the same story, same game plan. Okay? Destroy, save the man, destroy the Indian, save the man.
Yep.
Okay?
And we still here.
Still here. But that destroy the Indian, that destroy the African. Remember in Roots, when they were beating LeVar Burton, trying to beat him to death. Tell him his name, Toby. He was going to go to his grave. My name, Kunta Kinte. Okay? They could not beat it out. You can kill the man, but you can't kill, or the woman, but you can't kill the idea. Okay? And this is something that we have sustained for a very long time. But not all of us. Some of us succumb too easily. All right? It's painful. Hate is very painful, especially for those who are the object of it. Because those who are issuing it, they don't understand the pain. It'll come to them one day. It'll come to them. All right. Any questions on the first slideshow?
You mentioned there was a slide that I probably didn't get a chance to read all of it. But the first, the ones, the Asians that were the first in Japan, that migrated to Japan. Is there somewhere where we can, I know that somewhere
Yeah, I just took it out. Well, we spoke about the Pioneers, but before them was the Jamon. They were known to be an Africoid-looking people, and perhaps even before the Ainu. I can't give you a date. I don't know if I even gave you a date there as to when they think they came. But many of these, way before European contact. Okay? Similar to what was going on here in the Americas. You know, we have been, I say we, and I'm presuming this, but I think that perhaps everybody in the room has been educated to believe that there was nothing going on over here. I mean, when you were coming up as a child, okay, Christopher Columbus discovered America. There was only maybe some savages running around, you know, as you found out later on. That was not true. Okay?
Yeah, drunk and lost.
This is always the case. No matter where Europeans went, they came with the same game plan. Especially once they conquered, they started to erase your memory, our memory. Okay.
Well,
Go ahead.
if I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
They control the narrative because they control the papers, they control the writing, they control. If you look at, there's a book that's really interesting called Weird, W-E-I-R-D, which is West European. I mean, it tells you why they started, why the white, like the West, started to dominate, and it's because from biblical, when the women, they had to teach the women how to read the Bible in order to understand the Bible. So it's spreading the writing and the reading. So it's all about who controls the narrative. That's why when I went to say I was born and raised in Senegal, but I also learned Christopher Columbus discovered America. Except 15 minutes away from my place is the island of Gorée, which we always used to take the little boat and go and then you have the slave. Have you been to Goree? I don't know.
Right, no, but I
But
know
Goree
about it.
has like, you see the slaves, right? The chains and everything of the slaves. So we were very cognizant of that. And, we were exposed to all these narratives. But the key in all of this is how do you control the narrative? And today with social media, like with the genocide happening in Gaza, every individual can now control the narrative. We have the phone, we have everything. So what you're doing now, you're not rewriting history, but you're controlling how the narrative is spread by meetings like that, by putting things up. I just wanted to share.
And to piggyback on something she said, looking at some of those pictures, I see family members all up in those pictures. The other part though, knowing our history, we still are trying to teach people that Egypt was part of Africa. And the people that look like me are the originators of the Bible.
Yes.
And JC was a brother.
Yeah.
You know who JC was, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yes,
He was a revolutionary.
Yeah.
He was a true
And they
revolutionary.
don't understand that our people were centuries and centuries and centuries in the part. And I tell people, if you read the Bible, Ethiopians are mentioned all throughout that.
Yeah.
And then looking at my own DNA,
Yeah.
West Africa, Nigeria, Mali, North Africa. I got some circles in Virginia, Mississippi, some British, some French, Norway, and Iceland. Because it's all jumbled up. And it's just a matter of a boat on the currents. Going from West Africa to the Americas, Central, South, and North. And from the east of Africa to Asia, Australia, the Pacific Islands that you're talking about. We all cousins and they don't even know it.
But see,
I was just, listening, and I was thinking that, over the years that we've all heard that he who has the gold makes the rule. And we recently heard that repeated and quoted by the American president this week. He who has the gold makes the rule.
G-O-L-D.
G-O-L-D makes the rule. We've always
That's why
talked
he's
about
trying
the
to-
golden rule. So he's saying, again, he's repeated it. And being in his position, he who has the gold makes the rule. And everybody's been pointing at the oligarchs and the rich, and that's what he's saying. And that's what has happened over the years. Those that had the wealth have made the rules. Those are the ones that have been enslaved and stopped the narratives and created their own narratives from generation to generation. And I was just thinking of that, and it's starting again by him saying that he who has the gold makes the rule.
Except the narrative is shifting. You have in Burkina now, you have a new leader, a very young leader. His name is Traoré.
2 years old.
Who has basically put in jail the CEO of a French mining gold company. He has renationalized all and Gaddafi tried to do the same thing. They assassinated him. Our own President Barack Obama, unfortunately, vote into the system, right? So at some point in time, power gets to it's not power, it's like the pressure of power that gets to them in re-election. So the narrative now is how do you control the narrative? And honestly, we're in an era where there is an opportunity, a unique opportunity to shift that narrative and to create that global south we're talking about.
And more difficult to control it now because some of us that know are busting loose and exposing truth.
Exactly.
Anyway.
But Charles, thank you I knew nothing about the Jumon and so on. Thank you for that information.
Well,
That's so new to me.
I'm gonna, like I said, we're gonna be going through some of these, just a snippet. I mean, I'm not gonna take it, watching TV completely.
No, thank
But
you.
I want you to hear little snippets of certain videos because, all right, that was Japan, the Jomon and the Ainu.
Right.
But you can't get to Japan. If you come out of Africa, you got to go to
go
China.
up.
Especially at that time. There ain't no planes. Where's the plane? You got to walk. Or you have to sail along the southern coast.
And you just made me think of something. India. There are people in India who are darker than all of us in here,
Absolutely.
and in total denial about it. I had a conversation with a Eastern Indian physician a bunch of years ago. He was darker than me. You could not tell him.
Yeah.
And he wasn't, he had to get reactivated.
Well, listen, I keep referring to the scientific community. In the scientific community, we have a number of different professions: archaeology, anthropology. We have genetics now. Genetics is deeper than
And it's
this.
messing them up.
100 years ago, this was like, wow, man, now we can really identify because we got fingerprints. Well, now we got a inner fingerprint called genetics, okay, which is almost indisputable as to, who you are,
Yeah.
where you came from, your history, which is so important because those who control that narrative many times, like in Roots, want to tell you who you are. You ain't nobody. You ain't have no history. What do you mean I have no history? If I'm this old, that's the history.
Right. And then they do the DNA and they discover we cousins.
Right. So, and it goes back to, once again, if you are human. Now, we have some human imposters. Believe me, aliens are real. Who's phone?
Mr. Dewan.
Aliens are real. And whether you like to, we call them aliens. I'm not talking about the ones from this planet. I'm talking about extraterrestrials, okay, who can shapeshift. But never mind that, because I don't want to get in any argument. The vast majority of us are human. We came from a woman, a human woman, okay? We all have blood running through our veins. It's a little, from what I understand, it's a bluish color inside, but as soon as you cut somebody, it's red.
It's all red. I've
It's
seen
red.
all kinds of
And if the blue-black rascal gives a transfusion to an albino of any particular race, nobody's color going to change in the end. It's just going, that albino is now saved because now they got some blood that they need, So we're not paying attention. Some of us are not paying attention to the scientific community. But what I was going to say about China, stepping out of China, 1600 years, approximately 1600 BC. In other words, 3,500 years ago, there was an African group that became known as the Shang dynasty. And if we have time, we're going to go into some of that here. It's just going to refer to it. But let me take you to, well, you know what? Wait a minute. I should have done this. I wanted to do something new. Let me just stick to where I am. This, as you can see, we're talking about the Fijians. Those are the ones with the afros. The ladies wear the fros, the men wear the fros too. But they are very proud of their fros. They even say that their ancestors are from Tanzania, or they say Tanganyika, which is an East African country. So just listen to a little bit of this and see what you think about them saying. This is Runoko Rashid, who was a historian, a world traveler. Let me stop talking.
You got to turn your volume on.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Last minute, because I was told that these black people in the Pacific said they came from Africa. And they said it with great pride. Now, very few people that I know outside of Africa are willing to claim African ancestry. I heard that these brothers and sisters did. Naturally, I wanted to go there. And this brother blowing the conch shell represents my arrival in Fiji. Fiji is deep in the South Pacific, and Fiji is a series of about 300 islands, of which the largest is called Viti Levu. Let me show you some of the people I met at Viti Levu next. That's a nice slide, isn't it? Beautiful sister. In fact, the sisters are not only beautiful, but extremely friendly. And they all seem to like me, just why I don't know. But I certainly like them, and I asked them a lot of questions. I would pester them with everything you could think of. And I would say, for example, do you meet African Americans very often? They say, all the time. They said, well, we've never met any like you before. And I said, what do you mean by that? Because you ask so many questions. And I said, does that bother you? They said, no, we love it. We like the idea that you are interested in us. So I started asking them some more questions. For example, I would ask, who is the African American that you are most familiar with? They said, Muhammad Ali. And after that, Martin Luther King. And after that, Michael Jordan. I'm sorry to say that they didn't know much about Malcolm. I said, do you know Malcolm X? You mean the man in the Spike Lee movie? I said, kind of, something like that. And then they didn't know much about Marcus Garvey. And I asked them, I said, what makes a woman beautiful here? Of all the features that the black women have, what is it that makes a woman, what characterizes her beauty? They said it's her hair. And they have these big, beautiful, natural hairstyles, like Alton said he used to have, like I used to have.
Right. I just wanted to validate some of what I was saying about the fro, about the people in Fiji, talking about Tanganyika, and if you could see this map, unfortunately I can't put it up here for you, but Fiji is part of Melanesia. Mm-hmm. Samoa, on the other hand, Samoa is also part of Samoa is part of Polynesia, according to this, but Tonga is part of Melanesia. Now, if you look at all those people, you know, not all of them, certainly there are those on that island who do not look like that.
No.
But there are many on that island that do look like that. That's all I'm saying. All right? We were talking about China, and that was Japan.
So they ended up there in a slave trade or just migrated? Like you said, they were from Tanzania, which is East Africa.
Right.
So they should have gone through the Indian Ocean, you know?
Right.
Just
How did they-
migrating.
Huh?
Just migrating.
Just migrated.
Yeah, they were doing it long before British knew they were British.
Some were explorers.
By
See-
boat. Like,
Yep.
yeah.
As a matter of fact, when I was a little girl, middle school, high school, our history teacher we talked about the currents in the Atlantic Ocean, the South Pacific and all. All you have to do is get the little boat and ride the currents. You go back and
then
forth.
you end up somewhere.
They've been doing it for thousands of years, long before the Europeans knew they were.
So when they got there, so this black population, when they get, like, let's say take Japan or anywhere, right? Like even the Philippines, you say 30,000 years ago they were in the Philippines. So when they get there, today they're not the influential. So what happened to these communities that were probably first to be
They
there?
continued to carry their culture and live the way they did.
They did.
And adjusted to what the environment was, temperature-wise and other. They continued to do their thing.
And do they have the same rights in those communities?
Yeah, they do their thing, same way we do here. They carried the cultures and all that.
But
Yeah.
I guess, I'm thinking that how were they received by the people that were already
Yeah.
there?
Well, initially, the Europeans were received by my indigenous people on a cordial way until they showed their
Yeah.
butts and carried on.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
See, that's the thing. Throughout the world, whether we're talking about the Western Hemisphere, which we're in now, or we're talking about the Eastern Hemisphere, whenever those Africans, and they're very obvious, once they left early on, remember, slavery began on the east coast of Africa long before it began on the west coast. The Portuguese were around for both, but predating the Portuguese were the Arabs, many of whom were Muslim, were abducting Africans along the east coast, places like, well, to this day, if you go to, where is it, Kenya, and you go to Zanzibar. Zanzibar is a little island off of Kenya, known for, it was not only produce and, different trade, but we were part of the trade as well eventually.
Right.
But that wasn't always the case.
Right.
And as I said, the
Right.
Arabs started, say, around 800. Here in the West, they didn't get started until about 1500.
Right.
Portuguese on both trips.
And slavery was different. See, in America, on these hemispheres, we had that nasty, chattel, abusive, carrying on kind of slavery.
Intergeneration.
When you get into, for example, the Bible, perfect example, slavery was a condition. You worked as a slave for a period of time, you were free. Look at Moses and the folks. It was a whole different type of slavery. The Europeans came out with this control, abusive, crazy, chattel, wicked kind of slavery. Whole different kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you, in those earlier religions, like you said, those people, a part of their religion was a certain way that they would treat slaves.
Yes.
Which wasn't inhumane.
Right.
And they lived by that. It was a part of human existence, which was totally different from what we experienced in this country and in other countries.
A prime example of how slavery ain't good no matter how you cut it. But there was a difference in terms of when the Arabs took the Africans, sold them to the Indians in particular, but other places in the East, in China as well. But I'm thinking of a community they call the Sidi, and they are primarily in India. Their descendants have mixed with the Dravidians and the Tamil, who are also Africoid people. But the Sidi in particular, many of them rose to, well, I won't say many, a number of them were allowed to get out of their slavery because of their talents and assimilate into the society, and especially on a higher level. That didn't happen. We were very talented here. It wasn't happening over here.
Right.
I don't remember hearing that story over here. So it's just something, once again, same Europeans, the Portuguese, Spanish got involved, okay? But the Arabs, not giving them any pass, but things somehow panned out a little differently. I don't know if it's because of them or it's because of the country that they took some of those Africans to, all right? But Africans nonetheless, all over, all over. Let me just show you this little quick thing.
And I'm gonna park. I will see you later. I gotta do the next thing.
Okay, take care. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. This is on point.
Yes.
Nigerian Chinese, it's amazing.
The map you are looking at is not a map of China or Taiwan or Korea, carved terraces into the mountains. The early Chinese did the same in the Yellow River Basin. These echoes aren't isolated, they form a pattern. And here's what the elders say. The Haiyan language, spoken by the ancestors of these plateau peoples, is old, maybe older than we think. Some believe it holds fragments of a proto-language that connected early Africans to civilizations farther east. The map you are looking at is not a map of China or Taiwan or Korea. It's a map of an area of Nigeria. Specifically, it marks the ancient homelands of the Shanga people, also called the Shang or Shangawa. Alongside them are kindred ethnic groups such as the Mwagavu, the Biron, the Atiam, and others, who collectively share.
I'm just going to bring that up, okay? Now you may look at this and say, well, it's coincidence. You can only have so many coincidences, right? Let me just touch on Japan real quick, and we can
So they're saying that even their dialects, their language, is rooted into some Chinese language and stuff?
Yes, the Chinese is well, remember what I said.
This is amazing.
1600, about 1600 BC. Okay.
Similarly, the first thing the Edo people did when
1600 BC, Africans came over and formed a dynasty, and they were called the Shang people. You just saw Shanga in Africa. Close enough, okay? But listen to this. This is what really got me.
Accurate, established historical facts. A young Nigerian named Osazuwa was sent by his parents to Tokyo in Japan to attend university there a few years back. When he arrived in Tokyo, he made friends with the local Japanese students at his university and of course told them his name, Osazuwa. When he did, they looked at him in shock and said to him, "Are you joking? That's a pure Japanese name." And he said to them, "Of course I'm not Japanese, I'm from the Edo ethnic group in Nigeria." And the friends looked at him in even greater shock and said to him, "What did you just say your ethnic group was?" He repeated, "Edo." And then they said to him, "You've got to be kidding. Edo is the former name of Tokyo, this city we are in right now. Edo is the former name of Japan. It's also the name of the Edo Empire which reigned over Japan for centuries."
Wow.
Now the Edo period of Japan was from 1603 to 1867, also an era of military government. The dynasty was established by military commanders. Osazuwa, or Osa for short, was a history enthusiast, and he asked them who started the Edo Empire in Japan. And they said he was a military commander named Ieyasu. Osa was in total shock. The title of the military commander of the Edo Empire, i.e. the Benin Empire of Nigeria, who was second in power only to the king himself, was Iyase. As they chatted further, one of the Japanese looked up into the night sky and commented on the unusually bright moon, or Tsuki, and also asked him, "What did you just call the moon?" "Tsuki," he replied. And then also said, "In Edo, we call the moon Uki." And they looked at him in pure astonishment. And then he added, "Uki is also the name we use for beauty." The Japanese kids stood bolt upright as they screamed, "And Suki is the name we also use for beauty." As they wondered aloud in amazement, an elderly Japanese man walked up to them to ask for directions. And the Japanese students greeted him by saying respectfully, "Domo, domo." Osa heard them and nearly fell off his chair. He said, "That's exactly how we greet elders in Edoland. We say, Domo." Not sure what would have happened after that hypothetical exchange, but we can't help thinking that the young men would have probably brushed it off as an almighty coincidence of sorts and went about their normal lives. But our research team here.
Alright, one last thing,
Wow.
and we'll leave you alone. Other examples
That's amazing.
of African, you can call it similarity if you want, but
When you look at where Benin is
Benin,
yeah, is in the west, like, so if you go Lagos and you go
it would be,
east to west,
right.
it ends in Benin.
No, Benin is actually west
Of Nigeria,
Nigeria.
is northwest of
Yeah.
like, yeah.
no, just west, just go straight
West
across.
of
There are two little sliver countries that
Oh.
separate Nigeria and Ghana. If you come from Ghana, it's Togo. Next one, Benin.
Benin,
Next
yeah.
one,
Nigeria, exactly,
They
yeah.
probably weren't even separate countries if we go back centuries.
They were not, actually, yeah.
You know, long before the Berlin
very
Conference in the 1860s. But let me just, I want you to hear this little bit. And
This is super.
Japan. They founded a large kingdom they called Edo, known to the outside world as the Benin Empire or the Benin Kingdom. As early as the 9th century, they were among the various black African ethnic groups who migrated from Egypt, Nubia, and the area now known as the Middle East into West and Central Africa from between roughly 300 BC right up to about 900 AD for various reasons, including increased desertification of the Sahara and foreign invasions by Greeks, Romans, and later on Arabs. Seemingly, literally the first thing the Edo people did when they got to southern Nigeria was to build an absolutely massive wall and military rampart surrounding the entire kingdom, and even separating internal towns and villages, one from the other. Was there a plan to keep out the Arabs and other invaders? If that was the plan, it surely worked, because they went on to thrive and prosper independently, free of foreign invasion for many centuries, right up till 1897, when the British invaded them. According to the UK Guardian newspaper, the Guinness Book of Records 1974 edition described the walls of Benin City and its surrounding kingdom as the world's largest earthworks carried out prior to the mechanical era.
oh no,
So interesting.
we always get this mess. I need to get premium so I don't get...
According to estimates by the new scientist Fred Pearce, Benin City's walls were at one point 4 times longer than the Great Wall of China and consumed 100 times more material than the Great Pyramid of Khufu in Egypt. Situated on a plain, Benin City was enclosed by massive walls in the south and deep ditches in the north. Beyond the city walls, numerous further walls were erected that separated the surroundings of the capital into around 500 distinct villages. Pearce writes that these walls extended for some 16,000 kilometers in all, in a mosaic of more than 500 interconnected settlement boundaries. They covered 6,500 square kilometers and were all dug by the Edo people. They took it.
All right, so you get an idea. And remember, he was showing the connection between the Edo out of Nigeria and Benin and the Japanese. And when they spoke about Suke and Yasuke, that was, what was his name? The samurai? That was him?
Yeah.
They spoke of him. So, you know, just tidbits of things that are here, easily accessible. You all not so much, but younger folks, if they could just use this and this, not for the games, not to see what their girlfriend and boyfriend do. I mean, you can do all that because you're young, what you gonna do, you know? But don't spend so much time on it. Here's your encyclopedia. They don't even know what an encyclopedia is, but here's your encyclopedia. Here, Google, okay, among other things. You can learn more than you could probably learn in the schools that you go to. Not saying they shouldn't go to those schools, because unless they're going to be homeschooled, they have to go through the process. But we know in terms of history, even the better schools, the private schools, okay, are not teaching true history. And now in this political climate, teachers, because they want their job, they want to get their pension, I don't blame them, you know, they're hesitant to teach, at least formally, the true history that's available. It's been around for 100 years.
It's being phased out, and a lot of it is by design,
Yeah.
to
Exactly.
control the masses.
Exactly.
So a way to do it to the new generation is through either the arts, we talked about it earlier, or gaming. They like gaming. So when you look at all these games and the empires and so on, you could actually have, you know, there need to be, let's say, in the African, you know, some funding going into creating like interfaces to educate the people, to get them interested. They're not going to come to a library and listen to the way we do that.
I agree with you, and hopefully that's happening somewhere, you know, or if it's not happening, it will happen soon, okay, because that's what they need, that's what we need. Look here today, what do we have? We had 6 people in here. Sorry, Stanley, 7 people. He's working, but no, he's still listening. You know, 7 people. I only set up 20 chairs. You mean tell me we couldn't even get half the 2/3 of the chairs that's in here? No, because what I do is not sexy. Plus, like I was telling somebody, I don't feed you. So there's no reason for you to come. I can't get no food. You gonna talk about that history stuff? But this is stuff that helps us, I believe us, all of us, not only us here, but we people, humanity, understand better who we really are. Understand that just because he looked like that, or she looked like this, or that person over there acting like that, is part of your human family. And just like in your own nuclear family, there are people that you don't want to even admit that, Uncle Joey, let me hide. You know, Aunt Susie, you know how she do, stay away from her. It's still your family, unfortunately. You know? So, the key at this point is to understand who we are, to go back and find it. Like Arthur Schomburg said once, we should be, I forget his name. He said we should be antiquarians, but we should be the most excited and hard-working antiquarians, meaning historians, to go back and understand and dig up our truth. Not just the Negro's truth, which he referred to in this book, but our truth. humanity's truth.
So travel helps, right?
Travel is one
Travel
of
is
the
the
best
best.
educators, I think.
Yeah.
I think. You
Yeah.
know. Because what's better than being there, talking to like Rashidi? He went there, okay? Well, even any of us, when we travel, we actually talk to the person. Never mind. When we were home, we saw the travel. Oh yeah, that looks beautiful. We get there. Oh yeah, the land looks like that. But we actually talk to the so-called neighbors, the people who lived there, born and raised there. And you get the real story. You can't get that story on, you know, Netflix. Now, there have been authors and historians who've done an excellent job. But what's better than feeling the energy from that person, hearing the inflection of their voice?
Like this kid, this Nigerian kid that went to Japan. It's not only him who gets transformed, but the Japanese in his class now will never look at another black person or an African American person
Exactly.
with the same
Exactly.
lenses,
Right.
right? So it goes both ways, right? Both ways. You humanize the other, because I'm telling you, there's quite, I mean, even in the Arab world where I come from, there is, and it's all economics, right? It's all economics. It's like the more you keep a people, and in general, is you call them the melanated people.
Melanated people, yeah.
Melanated people, black and brown and so on,
Right.
the more you keep them under, the more they're part of that economical structure. So honestly, at the end of the game, it's all about economics. And
They never talk about that during the war.
the what?
The economics, they never talk about economics, what you're saying is true.
Yeah,
They never talk about that when they
No,
talk about
and
war,
then-
but it comes down to economics.
it comes down to economics. People don't vote in here. You know, you have people take Asbury running for mayor office, right? You have a town that is 50% black, and you don't have a single, other than
Well,
Campbell. After her, there was never a black mayor. Who represents the community.
we have,
That's-
and see, that's part of the problem too. We have, and you can find this throughout the country and throughout the world, especially in Africa, right? Many of the African leaders are just as African as their population that they came from. But their mind is not. They're not using that money that they're riding around in the finest, living in the palaces. Traore has a palace available to him, but he's not worried about that. Okay, I'm not saying he may live there, but he ain't, he's out in the field more times than he's in the
That's
palace.
why he's totally connected.
Right. The monies that he's not taking the contracts from the West. He has thrown the West out. The rest of these guys,
Okay, keeping the West in, because it's corrupt, right?
Yeah, because they get some more money.
It's how they corrupted the village chief.
so it's uphill
It
battle.
started to change. It started to change because of controlling the narrative.
That's it.
Yeah, you're right.
It comes down to.
Yeah.
Preserve their own gold.
Preserve their own gold and their own currency.
Right. But what about the people?
But the colonial mindset is there.
Oh, very much.
And when I was doing consulting in Gabon, they gave me the whole fiber optic backbone network to develop. I'm just sharing that because this is very significant to how we can influence. So I went to the commission, and the commission is all Gabonese, superb engineers. So I won the bid, and I was building the network and so on. I was, the entire phase. Come phase 2, they called me to do the consulting for phase 2. I said, guys, you are ready to take it on. You don't need me. Even though it's more money for me, I always had an interest to develop the local. The signal you don't understand somehow. If we don't have somebody like you, they won't trust our output. So so we had that conversation.
The source
Because
of
I'm
money.
quote unquote white, they needed the white person, the white man, to come in to build, and so think of the fallacy, the whites are the most corrupt. They corrupted the entire world. So when you think about it, is that ingrained, is so much in their DNA. that I need a white person to tell me that I'm a good engineer. That's sick, you know.
It
It's,
is.
but it's changing. Like George was saying, seriously, I think because the narrative started to change. A lot of PhDs, I work with a lot of Nigerian and African, all the PhDs coming out of there, they're realizing, and Trump is doing us a big favor, by the way, because you blew out the ignorance, the absolute racism and ignorance of
In a way, you're
the
right.
Western world.
Yes, he is.
So paradoxically, he is making us enter a new phase where people feel that, you know, they need to control and drive a different narrative. Sorry.
No, you're right.
On that note, I love the conversation. I'm glad that I was able to at least initiate it. And, but we are under the tyranny of the clock. It's almost 2 o'clock.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I'm going to have to call it in. One last thing. You saw him earlier, Noko Rashidi. This is one of his books.
What's the name?
That it's an African star over Asia. Tells a lot, and it's not only his writing in here, there are a number of other historians that are in this book. So you might want to at least, know what it is. Thank you for coming out, people.